The assembly will come to order. Boy, first Dancing Queen and Cyndi Lauper. If someone plays Lady Gaga, I'm just going to keel over. So I'm just kidding. All righty. Here we go. You're all ready? You're all ready? Okay. As you take your seats, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Todd Jones, moderator of the Committee on Confessions of the Church.
Mr. Moderator, Commissioners of the General Assembly, I'm Todd Jones, a teaching elder commissioner from the Presbytery of Middle Tennessee and moderator of Committee 18, the Assembly Committee on the Confessions of the Church. The vice moderator of the committee is Nicholas Yoda, a teaching elder commissioner from Cincinnati Presbytery. Our committee assistant has been Vanessa Hawkins, a teaching elder from San Francisco Presbytery. Our parliamentarian, Forrest Clausen, a teaching elder from the Presbytery of Inland Northwest. Vice Moderator Nicholas Yoda joins me in presenting our report. Our report, number 18, may be found on PCBiz at committee number 18 and also on paper at 18 RPT, report containing the committee's recommendations.
All right, so look for number 18.
Please note that our report does not contain a consent agenda. Our report does include an action on an item related to a study of the confessions of the church, an action item from our committee along with a brief report from a member of the Heidelberg Catechism Special Committee, and a recommendation for adding the Belhar Confession to our Constitution. The committee dealt with these recommendations decently and in order. There are resource persons here on stage to answer any questions from the Office of Theology, Worship, and Education, from the Advisory Committee on Social Witness Policy, and the Advocacy Committee on Racial Ethnic Concerns, and of course the Special Committee for the Heidelberg Catechism, named by the last General Assembly that met in 2010. Mr. Moderator, the screen is about to show the impact of action to date on both the per capita budget and the mission budget. If you were to pass the recommendations included in our report, you would add $36,250 to the 2013 per capita budget and $21,535 to the 2014 per capita budget. In PCBiz, you will find the recommendation, rationale, comments, and advice for item 18-02 that were considered by our committee. Mr. Moderator, on behalf of the committee, I move approval of the first item of business, item 18-02 as amended, to include the encouragement of presbyteries and congregations to set aside time to study the Book of Confessions across the church along with the presbyteries.
Friends, item 1802 as amended is before you. I call upon Commissioner at microphone number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Bruce Cameron. I'm a minister. I'm a teaching, there you go, you can have that back. I'm a teaching elder commissioner from Cascades Presbytery. I'm also the overture advocate for this motion. Our presbytery decided at a recent meeting that since there will be a 50th anniversary celebration of the Confession of 67 and the concept of the Book of Confessions coming up in 2016, at a General Assembly to be held in Portland, Oregon, in our presbytery. And that's the same place where the C67 and the Book of Confessions were originally adopted nearly 50 years ago. We decided in our presbytery that we would have a study during each time of our presbytery, hold up some aspect of at least one of the confessions, incorporate it into our worship, incorporate it into, for example, a pre-presbytery workshop, perhaps have one confession be held up Sesame Street style, as in this presbytery meeting brought to you by the Second Helvetic Confession. Anyway, we thought it would be a great idea for the whole church and all the presbyteries to also do a similar study as we prepare for the grand event. The committee also added it would be wonderful for congregations to undertake such a study and to celebrate this part one or part two? Part one of our Constitution. I have no doubt that this will pass. What I really hope is that it will be taken seriously, and you are free to email me at First Presbyterian Church of Corvallis. Let me know what wonderful ideas you have for implementing this study in the years to come as we prepare for 2016. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other comments or questions on item 1802? Seeing none, the question is, will the Assembly approve 1802 with amendment? All those in favor say yes. All those opposed say no. Right? Any abstentions? Motion is agreed to. The item is approved.
Mr. Moderator, at this point, I would like to turn over the next portion to Vice Moderator Nicholas Yoda.
Mr. Moderator, our next item is our report on item 1803 at the work of the Special Committee on the Heidelberg Catechism. At this time, I would like to ask the Reverend Dr. David Stubbs to speak to the Assembly about the new translation of the Catechism. Dr. Stubbs was a member of the Special Committee on the Heidelberg Catechism, who was given the task on recommending to the 220th General Assembly, this Assembly, a new translation of the present Heidelberg Catechism in the Book of Confessions. The committee was also mandated to include the scriptural citations. This translation was undertaken in cooperation with the Christian Reformed Church in North America and the Reformed Church of America. Dr. Stubbs will briefly present an overview of the timeline and process of the work that the Special Committee did on the new ecumenical translation in conjunction with the RCA and the CRCNA, and the work that they did to add the original scriptural citations to the new translation.
The chair recognizes Dr. Stubbs.
Great, thank you very much. There is a PowerPoint that goes with this. There it is. Very good. Thank you for allowing me to share with you about the work of our committee, both about the timeline and process we went through in finalizing this new English translation, and also about our work to include the original scriptural citations. Next slide, please. Oh, there it is. For the translation, we worked in collaboration with representatives of the Reformed Church in America and the Christian Reformed Church of North America to produce this new translation. In the summer of 2009, our committee decided to use the RCA-CRC draft translation as our base translation. We did so for several reasons. First of all, for its accuracy to the original German. This RCA-CRC draft translation, in fact, resolved all 5 translation issues that were raised by the original overture, including question 87. We also chose it because of its heartfelt and accessible tone, its gender inclusivity, and because we recognized that we had a great opportunity to produce an outstanding English translation in partnership with these 2 other Reformed denominations. After that initial decision was made, our committee carefully went over the draft translation individually, comparing it to the original German, and then together we produced a list of 52 suggestions for further improvement. Then in 2 rounds of talks, members of our committee met with the Joint Committee of the RCA and the CRC to go over those suggestions, as well as over 100 other suggestions that came from their own denominations. By the end of October 2010, we arrived at a final translation. This translation was then approved by both the RCA and the CRC-NA in June of 2011. Let me give you 2 brief examples of the kinds of translation issues and solutions that came up in this process. So next slide, please. There it is, question and answer 87. The underlining in that slide highlights the key differences between the current translation, the CRC-RCA draft translation, and the original German. Notice that the current PCUSA translation inserted an entire sentence that was not in the original German and paraphrased the German word unkosher, which is correctly translated as an unchaste person. Those problems, as well as the other 4 mentioned in the overture, and many others our team noticed, were solved quite well by using the RCA-CRC draft translation as our base. Next slide, please. This is a slide that shows the 1563 original German answer to question 87, and this is the German original that we compared the English to. Next slide. Here is an example of one of the 52 further suggestions for improvement to the RCA-CRC draft translation that our committee made. Question 21 reads, well, question 21 is, what is true faith? And up there you can see the answer. The answer is true faith, in the draft translation, true faith is not only sure knowledge by which I hold as true all that God has revealed to us in the Word. It is also a wholehearted assurance. The suggestion by our team was to change assurance to trust. The reason behind it is that the original German, Vertrauen, is better translated as trust, and is in fact translated that way in question and answers 81, 94, and 125. Furthermore, there are important theological differences between trust and assurance. And so the final version that we all accepted was true faith is not only a sure knowledge, it is also a wholehearted trust. With a good translation in hand, our committee moved on to the issue of scriptural citations. Both the 1563 German edition and the 1563 Latin translation had scriptural citations included in the catechism. Our task was to see if we could include them in our English translation. This may seem like a rather easy task. However, there are difficulties involved. Because of these difficulties, no current modern translation makes the original hundreds of citations available. The current PCUSA translation simply leaves them out. So as we approached this process, we were a bit unsure of what we would find. Here, next, yeah, there we go. Scriptural citation timeline and process. Here's a brief overview of our process and the main issues we found. In October 2010 to August 2011, our committee worked together and in subgroups to both determine and check the scriptural citations. There's 2 main issues that we had to deal with. The first one is that the 1563 German does not have verses in it. It only gives you the chapter, the book and the chapter, while the 1563 Latin translation does. In addition, there are many discrepancies between the German and the Latin citations. Second issue that we had to deal with is, would the scriptural citations make sense as supporting the text of the catechism to modern readers? Now, the solutions that we determined was, first of all, to the first issue, we decided to use the Latin translation as a base, but make apparent any discrepancies or errors to the reader. And for the second issue, we meticulously checked every scriptural citation and read them, and we found very few errors. And the citations we determined in general were quite appropriate and very helpful. Now, next slide, please. Here, I want to show you two examples. Oh, excuse me. Here's the image of the 1563 Latin translation. I know you won't be able to read it probably at all, but you'll notice that the scriptural citations are on the side. They're the marginal, the marginalia. And here, you'll notice that the scriptural citation is on the side of the main text. Every citation is keyed to a specific place in the text, sort of like a footnote. Here's two examples to show you the result of our work. Here, on question and answer 1, you'll see that all 3 citations were included in the Latin text as well as in the German text, even though the German text only had book and chapter. This is a fairly straightforward example. But now let me show you a particularly complicated example. Next slide, please. Here's question and answer 21 again. What is true faith? Here we are making apparent to the reader exactly what the citations are in the original German and Latin by using regular text, bold text, italic text, and brackets. The regular text means that the citation is in both German and Latin. Bold means only in the Latin, italics means only in the German, and brackets indicate editorial decisions. To our knowledge, there is no current translation with scriptural citations that stays as true to the originals. Next slide, please. I hope that makes clearer to you the nature and scope of our work with the RCA and the CRC-NA as we prepare the English translation, and our own committee's work as we prepared the scriptural citations. I have 3 brief reflections on this process. First, through this process, my own love for and respect for the Heidelberg Catechism has only grown. Both because of its tone and its theological content, the Heidelberg Catechism continues to be a living and wonderful statement of Christian faith and a very welcome part of our Book of Confessions. Second, my deep respect for both the members of our committee as well as the representatives of the RCA and the CRC-NA has over and over been confirmed. All the people involved, from different denominations and different wings of our own denomination, came together and worked together with care and precision, as well as open and faithful hearts to produce something that I hope will be of great benefit to our denomination. Finally, I would like to highly endorse this translation. I think it is an accurate and yet accessible and winsome English translation of this important document. It represents a reformed, evangelical, and ecumenical spirit that we can all be proud of. And it has been a great privilege for me to be part of this work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stubbs.
Mr. Moderator, item 1803 received significant discussion and attention and process. The committee heard testimony in open hearing, received information from resource persons, and listened to comments about the translation process from the General Assembly's ecumenical advisory delegates. The committee deliberated at length about the recommendation, and thanks to the special committee assigned the task of providing a new translation for their wonderful work. Mr. Moderator, on behalf of the committee, I move approval of item 1803 as amended to include scriptural references immediately following each question and answer.
Friends, item 1803 as amended is before you. Are there questions or comments? Chair recognizes microphone number 4.
Thank you, Moderator. My name is Susan Mazzara. I'm a ruling elder from New Hope Presbytery, and I have a question. I agree that the translation is quite readable, fun to read even, But I did notice that language about God is almost exclusively masculine. For example, the answer to question 6 reads, God created them good and in his own image, that is, in true righteousness and holiness, so that they might truly know God, their Creator, love him with all their heart, and live with God in eternal happiness to praise and glorify him. Could you please elaborate on the principles that guided this decision?
Mr. Moderator, may I call on Dr. Stubbs to address this question, please?
Yes.
I guess there's two answers to it. One of the things that we actually appreciated about the CRC-RCA draft was that it was more gender inclusive actually than our PCUSA translation. That being said, there's simply in the German that there's a lot of masculine pronouns and words, and so we were just faithful to the German.
Thank you, Dr. Stubbs. Any further questions or comments? I don't see anyone seeking recognition. The question is, will the Assembly approve item 1803 with amendment? All those in favor say yes. All those opposed say no. Abstentions? The motion is agreed to. The item is approved.
Mr. Moderator, at this point, I would like to return the final action and conclusion of our report to Moderator Todd Jones.
Mr. Moderator, our final item of business, 18-01, recommends amending the Book of Confessions to include the Confession of Belhar as provided in G-6.03. The committee was educated on the process of including a new confession in our Constitution. They heard from a number of persons during the open hearing, both for and against the overture. They deliberated long and hard. The decision that was reached reflects ample consideration as well as appropriate and prayerful effort, all of which were indispensable in discerning our recommendation. Mr. Moderator, on behalf of the committee, I move that the recommendation on item 18-01 as amended be approved.
Okay. Friends, item 1801 is before you.
Let me add as well, Mr. Moderator, we have a minority report on this item.
I will turn to the clerk to explain how we will handle the minority report.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. At this point, we'll ask the maker of the minority report to come forward and move the minority report, and then we will follow the basic substitute motion process, of which you will all be experts by the end of the week. We will first perfect the main motion, and then we will perfect the substitute motion, which is the minority report, and then we'll go to the question, shall the substitute motion become the main motion?
All right. Will the mover of the minority report please come to the podium? The chair recognizes the commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Sharon Brinks. I am from the Lake Michigan Presbytery, and the group of individuals who have signed the minority report has asked me to speak on their behalf. When I looked earlier, I did not see it in PC Biz, so I'm going to need to ask you to find it in your piles. It was not in order with your things on 18, and I did notice we had a typo. It is marked 1802, and it's actually 1801. We in the Minority Report Committee believe that the Belhar is a wonderful and important document. However, we voted no to the motion that is in front of you, and it is my job to try to give you a short idea why. You will recall that the Belhar has come to the presbyteries and has failed under our Book of Order just in the last cycle. One of the pieces of education we received is why it is important that it is hard to amend our Book of Confessions. We just did not pass this. We believe that our motion is a better approach at this time and this place for the Presbyterian Church USA. It recognizes the importance of this document and its tremendous historical significance in the apartheid environment of South Africa and its importance for us today. It commends it for study to the presbyteries and to the congregations, including wonderful materials that are available in our denomination. It answers some of the questions that are still inherent in whether it should ever become a confession of our church, including the concerns of many that it elevates unity to an idol in the church. Under our Westminster Confession, the chief and highest end of humankind is to glorify God and enjoy God forever, and we urge the substitute motion instead of the main motion, and should the substitute fail, the minority report fail, we do not believe in this time and place that the main motion should pass either.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Moderator, at this point, anyone who wishes to perfect the majority report, which is the committee's recommendation, should come forward to make amendments. And if none, you can declare it perfected, and then we would go to perfecting of the minority report.
All right. So what is in order, friends, are any motions to amend or amendments to the main motion, which is the committee's recommendation? Are there any amendments at this time to the main motion? Seeing no one seeking recognition, the chair declares that the main motion, which is the committee's recommendation, is perfected. We now turn to the substitute motion. Are there any amendments? Seeing no one desiring recognition, the chair declares that the substitute motion is perfected. We now then go to the question, will the minority report in the form of a substitute become the main motion? No amendments are in order. What is in order is debate and discussion on the merits of the motions. I turn to microphone number 5.
Mr. Moderator, Rex Espiritu, Whitewater Valley Presbytery. I wish to speak in favor of the substitute motion, the minority report. In light of our discussions earlier regarding budgets and stewardship, wanted to highlight that if we go with the main motion, that'll cost us something over $57,000 over the next few cycles. Whereas if we allow for time for study and reflection, considering the importance of the Belhar Confession, which was already voted down in the last cycle, this would not only afford us less expenditures, but also time to really deepen our reflection on the importance of the Belhar Confession. Thank you.
Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner at microphone number 4.
Nora Johnson from Great Rivers Presbytery. Thank you. I stand before you as someone appreciative of the Belhar Confession, yet as someone who argues that moving forward with Belhar now is inappropriate. Section 4 of the assessment of the proposed amendments to the Book of Confessions, which in the Book of Confessions is on page XXXV, states that when a new confession is proposed for a conclusion, I quote, "It should prove itself foundational to the Church's faith and life before it is proposed for inclusion in the Church's confessional standards." The recent failure of Belhar at the presbytery level is evident that Belhar has not yet proven itself foundation to the Church's faith and life. As this is a prerequisite step in the consideration of new confessions, we as a church are at a time of needing to establish proof that the Belhar Confession is fundamental to the Church's faith and life. The substitute motion provides a platform for study of Belhar in the context of our church's context before beginning the process of being formally considered by the General Assembly again. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes the Commissioner at microphone number 1.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Tim Simpson. I'm a teaching elder commissioner from Presbytery of St. Augustine and was a member of the Confessions Committee that approved this, the original motion made by the committee. If there is anything that is ignored less for study in the Presbyterian Church than the Book of Confessions, it's pastoral letters. Commissioners should be clear that this is an attempt to keep us from moving forward on Belhar by substituting something that will be studied even less. Belhar will become an irrelevancy if this substitute motion becomes the main motion. What we heard in committee is what many of us had heard around the country with respect to Belhar when it came before the presbyteries. One is that when it came, it was often covered over in the presbyteries by the overlay of concerns about Amendment 10A and the homosexual question. That came up a number of times because many people still in the church believe that Belhar is a kind of Trojan horse designed to get other nefarious things before the church that would otherwise not appear before the church. The other concern that we heard from many folks is that presbyteries did not adequately spend enough time studying it, or churches, congregations did not spend enough time studying it, and that there was inadequate reference. A moment ago, a commissioner raised the issue of the funding. Part of our recommendation is to add this funding so that experts on the confession can be sent to presbyteries around the country in order to alleviate the knowledge gap that existed about Belhar the first time around. Our committee rejected soundly this substitute motion when it was made in our committee, and we urged that the Assembly reject it as well and move to approve Belhar as the next confession of our faith. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The chair will recognize the commissioner who has a question at microphone number 3.
Hello, Mr. Moderator. Laura Phillips from the Presbytery of Newark, ruling elder. I think it might be helpful if we could translate some of these dollar amounts into pennies in terms of what it means to the budget. $50,000 is real money, but I don't know what that means from a per capita and from an addition to per capita.
Okay. Mr. Clerk.
Each penny of per capita is just a little bit shy of $20,000.
I'm going to recognize the commissioner at microphone 7 for purposes of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Randy Argall, teaching elder commissioner from Winnebago Presbytery. I have a question for the committee concerning the amendment. It refers to a special committee formed to study the Confession of Belhar be granted a budget. My question is, I don't believe there is such a special committee in existence anymore. Could we get some clarification on that?
Yes. Mr. Chair.
Our understanding is that that committee would need to be named, and that our practice in recent years has been that special committees are named by the moderator.
We had two green paddles before and one red. I'm going to recognize one more red. The commissioner at microphone number 4.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Lloyd Johnson. I'm a ruling elder commissioner from New York City. I believe that making the Belhar Confession part of the Constitution has a far greater impact on our lives than sending a letter to a church. Letters sent to a church often end up in file 13, never to be seen again. And I'm afraid the same thing would happen to the Belhar Confession. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to take one more set of green and red. Chair recognizes the commissioner at microphone number 3.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Carl Batesel, teaching elder at Lackawanna Presbytery. I ask you to support the minority report to be the main motion because it would address the crucial need to clearly articulate and communicate the sin of racism, and would do so without taking us a second time through the process which we completed just about a year ago, that of amending the Book of Confessions. If we go through that process again, it's like saying the first time didn't really count. In Lackawanna Presbytery, we had a conscientious process of discernment with a special time that we got together, yes, giving very appropriate and extensive time to Belhar, and then we voted at a subsequent Presbytery meeting on it, as well as the other amendments. When I was growing up as a kid and I'd lose in some competition with a buddy, say a race down the block, I would often boldly say 2 out of 3, and oftentimes I was taken up on that. But once in a while, I would tentatively say, oh, that was just practice. That first time didn't count. Why would I be tentative then? I think you know why. When something is presented as the real thing and that it really counts, it needs to count. Belhar can be, we can give Belhar a little more time to be accepted in the church, and this pastoral letter is a great way for that to happen. I'm asking you to vote to make the minority report the main motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll take one more red paddle. Commissioner at microphone number 6.
I'm Carolyn Weber, Mission Advisory Delegate from Ethiopia. I rise to speak in opposition to the substitute motion becoming the main motion. I served on this Confessions Committee, and I do believe that it's very possible that even the financial portion which is being asked to be approved would not even be completely spent. And that is because there are materials that are developed. These funds that are being requested are merely for transporting speakers around to the different presbyteries to speak to this issue. In regard to the statement that was made that this Belhar Confession elevates unity to the position of idolatry, if one takes a close look at the actual confession, one sees that the words about unity are always grounded in unity in Jesus Christ. And speaking of loving one another, of healing and reconciling divisions in the church. This particular confession is of great importance in our ecumenical relations. The Reformed Church in America has adopted this after 9 years of study. And we feel that this is very important to be added to our Book of Confessions to help balance out some of our other confessions and to really take a renewed look at reconciliation in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before I take a poll at the sense of the room, I want to recognize the Commissioner at microphone 4 for purposes of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ann Swanson, Teaching Elder Commissioner from San Francisco Presbytery. I also served on this Confessions Committee, and I was wondering if it would be in order for our committee to ask Mr. Kirkpatrick to give us some background information before we proceed to a vote.
We'd be glad to do that. Mr. Moderator, we would request that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Kirkpatrick. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Greetings, everyone. I'm delighted to give background information. I'm obviously not in a role of being an advocate at this point. I'm here with the Advocacy Committee for Racial Ethnic Concerns. Maybe what's helpful, I'm not sure exactly what background is helpful, is a word about my own involvement. As president of the World Alliance of Reformed Churches, we have been deeply involved over the years as a church with the Belhar Confession. It has been significant to the life of churches in Africa, around the world. But what at least I shared with the committee, as president, I was asked to be the moderator of the accompaniment group for reconciliation among the Reformed churches in South Africa that had been divided by apartheid, but it had been divided about whether they would make an affirmation together about God's unifying, reconciling, welcoming love for all people in Christ. I shared that a little over 2 years ago, I was in South Africa with that commission, and the people from the Dutch Reformed Church, which had been the church suspended for support of apartheid, their delegation was one group, another group from the Uniting Reformed Church that came up with the Belhar Confession. 2 years ago, they literally refused to talk to one another and would only talk through the moderator, as we're supposed to do here, but hopefully not because we don't talk to one another. 2 years later, and there was really a total resistance almost to Belhar, and I got very discouraged. 2 years later, I was back in South Africa with this past February with the same group. It was a miraculous change. The Dutch Reformed Church in their assembly had voted by an over 90% margin to begin the process of adoption of Belhar. And it was an incredible time of reconciliation in a place in the world deeply divided by race and deeply divided in the life of the church, of that kind of healing and reconciliation. And I was both in the position of being joyous, but also being embarrassed that my church had not affirmed Belhar. And I shared the South Africans together, suggested maybe they should have an accompaniment group for the PCUSA. But at any rate, I've had a long history with that. I believe that there is great theological substance to the document, but I believe you need to make a judgment about the best timing and how that should be carried out.
Thank you so much. There's a question at microphone number 7.
Melanie Hancock, Presbytery of Northern Kansas, also a member of this committee. I would like to ask also, mostly on the premise that I believe there has been a great lack of education on this Belhar Confession, if the committee would also ask if we could hear from Charles Wiley to present his presentation that he made for the committee on the theology and the background on this confession.
Before we do that, let me ask if the Assembly would like to hear further I see a sea of orange. Okay. Let me ask you the question, would you like to have further debate or further discussion? Please use your cards. Okay. I see a sea of orange. So let me just advise, okay, again, these are not the decision-making pieces, but you've been so advised by each other. Unless I see someone approach the microphone to call the question, I'm going to call upon the microphones for a green paddle. Is that an orange? Yes. Okay, sorry. The light makes it look like a red. Microphone number 5.
Mr. Moderator, my name is Jody Craiglow. I'm a ruling elder from Miami Valley. I call the question.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. It's a non-debatable motion. The question is, will the Assembly call the question and cease debate on this item? All those in favor say yes. All those opposed say no. The motion is agreed to. The question is called. The question before the Assembly is, will the substitute motion, which is the minority report, become the main motion? We'll use our keypads. Make sure it's on. Advisory delegates first. Please vote when your keypad is active. Please complete your voting now. Has anyone not voted? We await results. Theological Student Advisory Delegates, 23% yes, 77% no, no abstentions. Young Adult Advisory Delegates, 26% yes, 63% no, 11% abstain. Ecumenical Advisory Delegates, 75% yes, 25% no, no abstentions. Missionary Advisory Delegates, 17% yes, 83% no, 0% abstain. Commissioners, you have been advised. Again, the question is, will the Assembly make the substitute motion, which is the minority report, the main motion? Please vote when your keypad is active. Please complete your voting now. Has anyone not voted? We await results. The vote is 38% yes, 61% no, 1% abstain. The motion is defeated. We return to the main motion. No amendments are in order. Further discussion or question is in order. Are there any discussions or questions at this point on the main motion, which is the committee's original recommendation to approve item 1801 as amended? Commissioner at microphone number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Teaching Elder Commissioner Jim Thomas from the Presbytery of Elizabeth. and I rise to speak in favor of the main motion. When I was a first-year seminary student in the wintertime and winter term at OMSC in New Haven, a number of us wrote letters to F.W. de Klerk and George Bush. This was the late 80s. And we, at that time, could not conceive of an end in South Africa that did not involve a bloodbath and a race war. And then I went off to be a missionary in Thailand, came back in 1996, and when I came back, the world had changed. The world had changed. Largely because of one man whose name you know, Nelson Mandela, but in great part because of the faith of Belhar, the faith of the framers and composers in the churches that resisted to the point of shedding blood, as it says in the letter to the Hebrews. And when I read the Belhar Confession, I know that I'm reading about the faith of saints and martyrs of whose faith I am not worthy. The Belhar Confession inspires me. The Belhar Confession represents a moment in the life of the church, much like the Barmen Confession does, the Declaration of Barmen. And our confessions are always have been historical documents, crystallized nuggets of Christian, not only doctrine and truth, but practice and experience from history, from lived experience, shared in the crises of Christians' lives. And to lose, not to lose it because we don't have it yet, but to add it to our book of confessions is to add the whole global South and to add that experience of post-colonial coming to grips with a terrible, terrible situation and making a new situation out of the languishing, lingering, laboring colonial past. I believe that is a vacancy that exists in our Book of Confessions and will exist in our Book of Confessions until, as a global church, and we are a global church with ecumenical partners, we adopt Belhar. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair recognizes Commissioner at microphone number 3. In the negative or in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am Douglas McGill, Ruling Elder Commissioner of the Presbytery of Lake Erie. The standing rules of the General Assembly for Commissioners' resolutions prevent the acceptance of a Commissioner's resolution at this Assembly for matters, quote, substantially the same issue, end quote, considered by one of the 2 previous sessions of the General Assembly. Now, I understand this item is not a Commissioner's resolution. It would start the amendment process again for Belhar, which in Presbytery meetings after the last Assembly failed to achieve the required 2/3 vote of the Presbytery. As with Commissioner's resolutions not bringing up again items considered in the last 2 Assemblies, we ought to let some time elapse before we start again the consideration of Belhar. Vote no on 1801. Thank you.
I'll take one more set. Commissioner at microphone number 4.
John Etheridge, Ruling Elder, New Hope Presbytery. I too served on that committee, and there's one little story that I want to share with the group that I shared with them. To me, the Belhar Confession serves as a mirror for the church. And what I mean by that is that it allows us to look at who we are. About 15 years ago in a Presbyterian church, we had an interim pastor who came in and asked the session, please tell me what you do in the church. and about 3 months later, the pastor was gone. They didn't like what they saw. So Belhar helps us to look at who we are. And brothers and sisters, we need help today. What I mean by that is this. In riding the elevator here in Pittsburgh, there are people who looked at my badge and knew that I was a commissioner, would not speak to me. Then there were others who came on the elevator who started a conversation among themselves. So what I'm saying is that in our hearts, we sometimes need some recognition as to who we are and what we need to do. And I will be the first to admit that I myself need to look at Belhar in that when I see a young black man with his pants down or a group of them, I lock my doors, and that's not right. So we need something to help us to be reminded of who we are and that we're all God's children.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to recognize one more red paddle. Commissioner at microphone number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Philip West, teaching elder commissioner from Charleston Atlantic Presbytery. I speak against this motion. While there are many things that might bring us together in greater unity, particularly the Spirit of Jesus Christ alone, I do not think that Belhar is the answer to that unity. In the words that are quoted here, anything that threatens this unity may have no place in the church, and further, a refusal earnestly to pursue this visible unity as a priceless gift is sin. In other words, it seems to me that a part of the implication of Belhar is that what we are doing here all this week, ironically enough, in our disagreements with one another, which can create much disunity in the name of Jesus Christ, would therefore be sin. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to ask you to use your color cards to help gauge a sense. Do you want further discussion and debate? Blue, yes. Orange, no. Black, not sure. No. Okay. Sea of orange. So let me advise you all, in seeing that sea of orange, that folks are wanting to end further discussion and debate. Is there objection to calling the question? Unless someone comes to a microphone, or is there objection to calling the question, or can we do it by unanimous consent if we could agree to call the question? Number 1.
Ed Norris, St. Augustine Presbytery, call the question.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to call the question a non-debatable motion. The question is, will the question be called? And we cease debate on this, on the original motion. All those in favor say yes. All those opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? The motion is agreed to. The question is called. The question before the Assembly is, will item 1801 as amended, which is the committee's recommendation, be approved? We will use our keypads. Be sure they are on. Advisory delegates, please vote when your keypad is active. Please complete your voting now. Has anyone not voted? We await the results. Theological Student Advisory Delegates, 78% yes, 22% no, 0% abstain. Young Adult Advisory Delegates, 80% yes, 17% no, 3% abstain. Ecumenical Advisory Delegates, 83% yes, 17% no, 0% abstain. Missionary Advisory Delegates, 86% yes, 14% no, 0% abstain. Commissioners, you have been advised. Again, the question before the Assembly is, will item 1801 as recommended by the committee be approved as amended? Please vote when your keypad is active. Please complete your voting now. Has anyone not voted?
Sure. Go ahead, too.
We await the results. Friends, the vote is 59% yes, 40% no, 1% abstain. The motion is agreed to. And the item is passed.
Mr. Moderator, this concludes the report of the General Assembly Committee on Confessions of the Church.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and members of the committee. Friends, at this time, the chair recognizes Dr. George Hunsberger, moderator of the Committee on Theological Issues, Institutions, for the purpose of a special recognition.
Mr. Moderator, Commissioners, advisory delegates, and guests of the 220th General Assembly, I am George Hunsberger, Teaching Elder Commissioner from the Presbytery of Lake Michigan and moderator of the Assembly Committee on Theological Issues, Institutions, and Christian Education. Committee Vice Moderator Mary Lou McMillan, Ruling Elder Commissioner from the Presbytery of Shenandoah, joins me in presenting our report. As a whole, this report will come later on our docket, but I appreciate with gratitude your willingness to take this one particular item before we adjourn for lunch in the interest of a very special guest that our report celebrates. Item 17-A that you will find in PC Biz has further details about what will be presented to you now by Vice Moderator Mary Lou McMillan.
Mr. Moderator, Committee number 17, in dealing with the business before it, was pleased to take several actions on behalf of the Assembly and would like to present the following item for both the information and the celebration of the 220th General Assembly. Concerning item number 17A, the committee was pleased to recognize the outstanding lifetime contributions of the Reverend Dr. John B. Trotty, Professor Emeritus of Bibliography of Union Presbyterian Seminary, to theological education in and for the Presbyterian Church, USA, with the Award for Excellence in Theological Education. Dr. Trotty will be honored tomorrow morning at the Committee on Theological Education breakfast at the 220th General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church, USA. If it please the moderator, might the Assembly recognize Dr. Trotty at this time and permit me the honor of presenting him this award.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply grateful for this honor. I just want to point out that I'm the one with the round ears rather than the pointed ones with my gargoyle. When my grandchildren heard about this, they described it as Da is getting his reward. I hope that's not a final terminal reward, but it is one that is deeply meaningful to me. I have loved this church all my life, been a Presbyterian all my life, had a wonderful short ministry in Alta Vista, Virginia, in what's now Presbytery of the Peaks. Went to the seminary, and many people were dismayed that I had left the ministry. I in no way left the ministry. There is a tremendous ministry through the faculty and through the library. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you have honored me in this way, and I will continue to shuffle down in the basement of that library and pack books to send overseas and to greet and love whatever students and faculty come in my path. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, we are pleased to recess our report in the interest of dinner.
Very good, thank you. Blue cards, right? Mr. Clerk, are there any announcements?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, there are two announcements. One is to announce that the offering taken this morning at the ecumenical worship service was $4,834.18. The second announcement, I don't want to call it that, is to answer a question that we have received from more than one person, is of how the resignation of the Vice Moderator happened, or at least how it was received. The Manual of Operations in Section 4B 2.0 state that the state clerk shall accept resignations from positions of General Assembly entities and declare them vacant, which I did regretfully so. So that was the process, Mr. Moderator, that we followed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We will be in recess following the closing prayer by the Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Jappinga of the Reformed Church in America.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Will you please stand for prayer? Let us pray. We approach you, O God, humble in the presence of your love and your wisdom, and grateful for your promise to lead and guide us always. Stay alongside us in this assembly, we pray, even when we are not looking for you or when we think we cannot see you, that we may be alert to your guidance, both in the words that we speak and in the reflections of our hearts. Help us all to trust in you and to grow up in the ways that you would have us grow. Lord, hear our prayer. God of the world, I give thanks for the witness of the Presbyterian Church USA, and for the many ways this witness is offered collaboratively and ecumenically with partners in faith, both in our communities and around the world. As we work and witness together to the gospel, one for the world, may those whom we serve see in us a measure of Christ's love and transforming grace. Lord, hear our prayer. Together we work. Together we witness. Together we know your grace. Come, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. The assembly stands in recess.
Sure is hot out here. No?